Stillwater's Morning Scramble, and as we're going to visit with the mayor, I will tell you I'm a little disappointed in Wayne Bovichin today because I thought, well, good, he's from Michigan, and I thought we're going to talk about the Pistons and Dennis Rodman, I bet, today.
I didn't know that it was on last night. I was watching a movie with friends, and Men in Black 2 to be precise. So yeah, I'll watch it again.
Well, I just saw the first one last night. I started late, and then I thought, well, I'll watch the other one today. But they're really good, aren't they, Will?
So I didn't watch last night's either. I saw the first two when they were on last week, and really enjoyed it. But yeah, last night was beautiful outside, and we had the fire pit going, and we hung out on the patio all night. So I'll have to catch up with it later this week.
I remember because Steve was telling me off air that it was, regarding the Pistons, and I remember those days very well because Michael Jordan
Rodman,
was
pretty much.
Yeah, Michael Jordan was the man, and they would go up against the Pistons and then just get destroyed early. And then my poor Pistons just fell off the planet.
I don't know that anybody watched that go, oh, those poor Pistons.
Yeah, well, not very many people liked our center, to be exact, yeah. Or Dennis Rodman. Yeah, they just didn't like him. And I didn't realize how many people didn't like Isaiah Thomas. But he was a little bit of a dirty player every once in a while, too. I mean, I think he just was trying to fit in with the bad boys image. And, if you're a Detroit fan, you love him.
He was leading the bad boys. He was the ringleader.
Well, you're not wrong.
But there was a lot on that last night, and I thought, well, Wayne's coming in tomorrow, but I'm kind of like you. I spent most of the time outside, so I started it late, and so I didn't see part two because I watched it off the DVR. But I thought, oh, this will be good because, and it's sort of with any team, if it's your team, you excuse anything, right? And with your Pistons. They were respected, but they were hard to love because their idea is, well, we got a little less talent, so we're going to have to brawl every game, and brawl they did. So,
and it was mind blowing to me that Dennis Rodman ended his career with the Bulls after all that went on, and then he got even a little more crazy with the hair and all that stuff, and
marrying himself.
Yeah, exactly. But he did all that with the Bulls, so. We'll let Chicago own that one.
Anyway, there's a little bit of a distraction out there right now that people are trying to find. But when you get back to reality, the reality is we've got a lot to talk about. And there is a meeting tonight, and you're going to be covering some of the things because part of the state has lightened things up, and we're still shelter in place and trying to figure out what our next phase is, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think what the most likely outcome is, and I can't, say this for certain because it's going to be a council discussion tonight. But I think the most likely outcome of what you see right now in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and around the state is the adoption of the general outline of what's opening. Right, so the same types of businesses that the governor is saying should open in phase one will likely open here as well. I think that where you'll see differences is going to be in the requirements necessary for those businesses. So, if you watch David Holt on Friday, one of the things he talked about is that the state's guidelines have a lot of should consider and you might want to do this kind of things, in terms of social distancing within the establishment or requiring face coverings. You may want to ask people to wear face coverings, kind of advice. I think where you'll see the differences are probably around, that stuff being a little bit more enforced and even mandatory within Stillwater to say, yeah, we want you to consider it, but we actually want you to do it, right? We want to make sure that you're doing that, right? Whether it's checking your employees' temperature when they come in or, there's different guidelines that the state has suggested, and I think, like they mentioned Oklahoma City, that those will likely not be suggestions here. They'll be requirements. Because, I think what we've seen in all this is there are a number, just like we were talking about with churches, right, a big majority who are conscientious, who are paying attention, who do, want to do the right thing and are being responsible about what to do. And they're going to do that, right? They don't have to be told to be careful. They're going to be careful on their own. The reason rules, like this have to be made is that there is a small group of folks who don't and who aren't thinking about it, or maybe just aren't paying attention, or who just don't want to deal with it, right? They just don't want to have to put those things in place. And unfortunately, that's the group that we have to be a little bit more stringent in talking to and informing. No, this stuff needs to happen, right? Because you only need, as we've seen with this virus, you only need one group or one, establishment or one party or one thing to really start a very, very dangerous and, fatal sort of outbreak, right? I mean, look at Southwest Georgia and the history around, a party and a funeral and that sort of thing, and that was early, right? So it wasn't like they were flouting the guidelines necessarily at that point, but it does not take much, right? And so we want to make sure we know that the vast majority of the people here in town are going to be responsible and are going to follow guidelines whether we tell them to or not. But what we're trying to protect against is that the smaller group that either isn't paying attention or just doesn't want to do it understands how important it is to follow those sorts of guidelines. So we will talk through that. The open up and recover plan from the governor in phase 1 does include dining, entertainment, movie theaters, gyms, places of worship, tattoo parlors being able to open as of May 1st. So I would expect that will be the case in Stillwater on May 1st. But like I said, the specific guidelines around what's going to be required to do that will likely be more stringent than what the state is requiring at this point.
Well, who writes those up? I mean, take us behind the scenes a little bit, because in talking last week to some folks, including a couple of business people that we had on the air, what they noticed from what the governor was saying was there was no communication. Now people were wondering, because they were talking to people in like businesses, and they had no idea where to go or what to do or what rules they had to adhere to. Who writes this up here in Stillwater, and how do we get that message to the businesses on what they are and are not allowed to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. From a local perspective, what we put in place would just be part of another sort of emergency order. So our staff would help, figure out what those need to look like. We would write them up in that order, and then, sign it and distribute it through the news, through social media. The local health department, the county health department, also does publish signage and helps get the word out about what the rules are. I know, I saw their signage for personal care, barbershop kind of businesses, that they will distribute out to those businesses and say, you can put this on your door to help communicate what the rules are for people as they're coming in. Some of those businesses, like the sort of beauty industry, the State Board of Cosmetology that licenses those folks has been communicating directly with them to provide additional information, right? So you have what you've seen here is what the governor puts out as a plan, and then there's what the governor says in his news conferences, and then there's what the State Department of Commerce publishes as its specific guidance. And in my experience over the last week, those things have not always been in line with each other.
Right.
Right. I mean, when the governor talked about opening nail salons and that sort of thing, and talked about, well, you'll have to wait in your car and you won't be able to go into the waiting area. You've got to make an appointment, all that sort of stuff. Well, none of that's actually in the Department of Commerce's rules. Now it is in the State Board of Cosmetology's rules, but you've got to go 4 different places to try to figure out what exactly the rules are. So that is part of what we're going to try to consolidate. Right, we're not going to be making these rules up on our own. We're going to be using that information that the state has put out. Rob Hill and his team have been working for the last few days to try to collect all that, make sure we have, we've got all of the guidance that's been published either by the state, by the CDC, and really sort of compile it all up, figure out what the guidance is out there, and then really make a determination of, is this a suggestion? Is it a requirement? Is it something we want to say at all? So we're kind of collating all that information from a lot of different sources, and then making local level decisions about whether how we want to apply that locally. But there is a lot of information from a lot of different groups. I know the Restaurant Association is putting out their suggestions. Like Wayne mentioned, church, sort of the structures, whether it's the Catholic Church, coming down from the
Right.
from the church leadership, above local churches, they're putting rules in place, right? So there's a lot of different groups that are contributing here. So we're going to try to collate a lot of that together and give people, a clear, this is what you have to do in Stillwater, and then push that out. We also have we published a couple of weeks ago what we call the social distancing protocol for the essential businesses that were open. That was kind of a form that covers all of the sort of areas, right? So, how many people are you allowing in your store? What are the requirements you have for them? How are you maintaining physical distance in the store? And we asked them to fill that out and actually post it on their door as well, so that people could see what they were doing. And I think we'll try to incorporate that as well, right? To just give everybody the same sort of, not every business needs to have the exact same rules, right? I mean, the distancing rules in Walmart are going to be different than the distancing rules in a small retail shop. But we want to make sure people are applying the same concepts and the same concern about it, and then posting what they're actually doing, right? Actually saying, okay, here's our rule. This is what we're going to do, and letting people know. So there's a clearer level of communication about what's actually happening at each location.
I want to go back to what Will was talking about with his church, which you said May 24th is what they're shooting for. Is that right? Is what they indicated? Will.
Will or
Wayne,
Wayne?
I'm sorry,
Oh, sorry. No.
Get my W's mixed up here.
Well, no, that's when the bishop has said we will allow you to, but then the local churches are deciding. I'm not sure. I think they're looking more summertime.
Now, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Will they have, with phase one, do they have the option if they choose? And if they do choose to go back to church, what's the number? Because does that change? Is the number 10 now gone from the equation on a limit?
That's a really good question, Steve. And it's one of those areas that we will discuss tonight, because there are conflicting messages about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The federal guidelines, the White House guidelines that Governor Stitt is sort of modeling this after, does include a 10-person. Still includes the ban on groups larger than 10. It seems to exempt certain types of gatherings, including church gatherings. I'm not sure there's been a lot of talk about First Amendment rights and all that kind of thing. I don't understand how you can, if you say you can't gather in groups of more than 10, but churches can, right? I mean, to me, if I'm not a church, if I'm a social group, why can't I gather in groups of 10 or more, right? To me, it has to be applied across the board, or it shouldn't be applied. And the governor has said in his order, instead of copying what the CDC order says, he said, well, you should avoid groups, right? But because then his restaurant rules also talk about how you have to do spacing at banquets, and I'm going, wait, well, I don't understand that. Are you saying you're going to allow banquets? Even the CDC is still saying 10 people. There's a lot of confusion over exactly how that applies. And we've got to figure out what we want to do with that, right? I mean, I think like I said, the CDC and White House guidance is that phase one should still include a 10-person limit. I certainly think that is the more reasonable approach. But who does it apply to, and how does it apply is one of the difficult decisions that we've got to make.
And that's all coming up here tonight. Anything else that you want to get out here? I know you've given us a lot of your time, so I do appreciate that. I know you have a full day, but I get the idea. One of the main worries is the fact that we've worked so hard and done really a pretty good job about staying home, hunkering down, trying to get this behind us, if it ever will, and that we're going to get impatient and undo all the good things we've done.
Yeah, that is a real concern. It is. I mean, I think nothing has changed about the nature of this virus, or about our ability to treat it, or our ability to prevent it. From May 15th or March 15th, when we put our first order in place, to now, we are still dealing with the same virus. We're still we still have no vaccine and we still have no effective treatment. The only thing that has helped reduce the spread of this virus is the steps we've taken to be physically distant from each other and decrease the possibility of transmission. So to me, to take back those steps and to loosen those steps, there is no other. There's nothing else we can rely on to ensure that transmission rate remains low. That is a concern. I think we still need to be. I think my message would be, just because things are potentially going to open back up, doesn't mean you have to go out. Doesn't mean you can still pick up food by call ahead and curbside. You can still get your essential supplies the way you have been. I hope no one feels pressured that they should be out if they don't really want to be. If you don't feel comfortable, I think business owners have expressed this the same way churches have expressed it, which is, we appreciate the fact that we can if we want to, but we don't want to. And so, I think you'll still see a number of places that aren't ready to move ahead. And, I hope that people recognize that and understand that and continue to work to reduce the transmission of the virus, because we are in, more prepared from a hospital perspective than we were 6 weeks ago. But the virus has not changed. The virus will spread if we give it a chance to spread. And like Shayla was saying this morning, you get 5 or 6 patients in the hospital with COVID, you start burning through PPE really fast.
Yep.
And we will very easily put ourselves back in the situation we've been working so hard to avoid if we let this virus spread. So please continue to work on social distancing. Please continue to do everything you can to keep your neighbors safe. Wearing a face covering is one of the just very simple ways that you can help do that if you're going to be out in public. It's not, the cure for COVID. It is not going to, keep anybody from ever getting sick, but it is an effective way to help reduce that rate. And we would encourage everybody to do that no matter what. We'll talk more about what that looks like tonight. We, Steve, just want to briefly just say we're also doing other business of the city, right? So the other thing we're going to talk about tonight is our drainage plan, right? We've been working for a while on looking at our drainage and stormwater maintenance, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what that study is. The rest of the business of the city is still ongoing, and so you'll be able to hear some about that tonight as well.
Beat does have to go on. That's a good message to end on. I really do appreciate all your time, and if we need to, we can do this again next week, or certainly next Monday. I'll lock that in if that's all right with you. But I'll probably see if I can get some time with you Wednesday or Thursday morning to talk great.
a little bit more about what these rules look like.
That sounds perfect. Just send me a note. We'll be here.
Excellent.
So, all right.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Dwayne.
There you go. There's the mayor, Will Joyce. Appreciate his time. Appreciate you throwing this some input there too.
Yep.
So the church stuff was important because that's such a vital part of the community.
Well, and it's just there's so many questions about who is like he said there toward the end, who is going to be allowed to do what, and that's what they're meeting about. And I think just the culture for the majority of the population has changed. I think you're going to see everybody that has a portable bottle of hand sanitizer in their car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, no different than anything else that you do. You brush your teeth in the morning. I just think that's going to be something, probably a lot less handshaking, which a little bit of a bummer, to me, because I think that's important just, in our own cultural interaction. But for a while anyway, that's going to be a little different.
Yeah. So, hey, good stuff. We're going to get a break in here, and then we'll come back. And Steve Ruby is with us he's with the Spear School of Business, and we'll talk about the restaurant and tourism industry, which is always interesting, right? So,
that's just, and I'm interested to find out, because I don't know if they've had any meetings or not, but I'm definitely interested to find out, well, how are you going to, when you reopen? Because that's a lot of people in close quarters.
Absolutely.
Thinking of Eskimo Joe's, thinking of, the places where we like to eat. How do you do all that distancing and whatnot?